Hey there, mama friend, and welcome to the 5-Minute Mom Podcast, where we'll talk about real life, real faith, real fast. To learn more about all of our co-hosts or to sign up for a free monthly resource email, be sure to check out all the links in the podcast show notes. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the podcast in our fall 2022 season. If you have been following along with me on social, you may have already seen the big news, but if not, I have a pretty huge surprise for you. And that surprise is that the podcast has grown over the summer. We now have not one, but 5 co-hosts, and I am over the moon about the ladies that the Lord has really brought into this space to minister, to encourage, and to teach all of us in this season. And I have to tell you that the way He put this together was so overwhelmingly beautiful. About 6 months ago, I really had this tug that something had to change for the podcast and for my process and honestly my pace. And if I'm being brutally honest, which I will be because our tagline says real life, so I'm going to give you some real life here, but I found myself at a place of complete burnout. And so many things contributed to that. My husband is a pastor, so in the last 2 years, we were really walking our church through the pandemic and all the decisions that came with that, but also all of the hard and the heartache that came with that was really overwhelming. And I'm sure I could sit with any of you and you could share stories of how this pandemic affected our emotions, our mind, our jobs, our families, our way of life. And so the pandemic completely stretched, it changed, it challenged us, as I'm sure it did you. But we were also knee deep in foster care and the extreme emotional roller coaster that came with that. We were also living in a ministry apartment, which was a beautiful and honestly really fun assignment, but it also took up the majority, if not all, of our free time and our margin. So I was just having a hard time seeing where the podcast fit in with that, all of that mental load. And we were stretched so thin as a family. And despite being very prayerful and doing my very best as a mom, there were days where I honestly didn't feel like I had a lot to offer other moms in my state of really depletion and doubts. But for whatever reason, God just wouldn't fully release me. And I tried. I was like, God, there's just too much on my plate. Maybe it's time to end this. But He just kept saying, think bigger. And by bigger, He didn't mean do more or bigger and better, like more achieving. But He really meant bigger as in kingdom bigger, to expand my thinking. And bigger ended up being inviting more people in to help. And suddenly I was able to pinpoint that I didn't need to quit, but that I needed help and I needed community in this space. So I began to pray about who are the women, God, that you want me to invite into this space. And initially I thought, it's going to be women I know or women that I've worked with in the past. But He closed all of those doors. And He started to lead me to people that I never dreamed would be on the list initially, because He began to put the faces of women that I barely knew, but they were ministering to me in a beautiful way, either through their books or social media or their writing. And they were already showing up in a way that was impacting me profoundly. And God was very specific in bringing their names and their faces to me. But can I tell you how awkward it is to reach out to women that barely know you and say, oh, hello, let me slide into your DMs on social and ask you to podcast with me on a regular basis, and you barely know me. But God just kept being relentless in the women that He was putting on my heart. And it was so cool when I began to step out in faith and reach out to these women. And some of these stories are just so detailed and some too personal to tell. But I will tell you that each and every woman he invited to be a co-host, there was some version of this testimony. Like, wow, it is crazy that you're reaching out to me because God has been telling me for the last 6 months that I'm supposed to podcast or that I'm supposed to be a part of starting a podcast, but I haven't either had the time or the experience or the margin or had no idea how to do it. And all of the people that God put on my heart were yes, not because of me, but because he had moved before me and he was thinking bigger than me and in more kingdom way than me, infinitely ahead of me. I mean, imagine that. So it was really cool to see the way that he was moving and taking care of me way before I even knew how to ask. And when I see the group that God has called into this space, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is something so much bigger than me and something I could have pieced together. And here's what's so beautiful. We are all so different. There is such a rich and valuable diversity here. Our backgrounds, our locations, our personalities, our stage of life. So no matter where you are in your parenting journey or your personality, there's just a depth here that just simply couldn't exist before. So with that being said, I am so pumped for you to meet Bailey Hurley, Lauren Diggs, Simi John, and Renee Swope. And I am so honored that they are sharing their God-given gifts, talents, and passions in this space. And I know that you will be so touched and eternally impacted by their hearts for Jesus. So moving forward, practically, you'll notice a rotation of monologues from each of the co-hosts. And we are really excited. We got together and we really talked through what was on our hearts for this season. So this season's theme, drum roll please, is going to be small habits, strong disciples. And I'm excited because I know I need this so much in my life and I need to hear from these other women. And I know one thing about you as listeners, you already desire to be intentional with the spiritual formation of your kids. You are here and you wouldn't be here if that wasn't true. So the desire is there, and I just think we need to get practical. We're going to get in the weeds and we're going to go small for big impact. And we're going to help you get really practical and applicable with things like prayer, biblical literacy, discipling your kids, and give you some steps so that in this busy world, you can actually implement and walk out the things you care about and create discipleship habits you can stick with. And to help you get to know our co-hosts even better, this fall, I'm going to be sprinkling in our interviews, which feature these amazing young ladies. So, in the next few months, you're going to be hearing their stories, their testimonies, and really go deep with them on what I call their holy discontent is. And so that is what our interviews will be this fall. So thank you so much for joining us. It's going to be wonderful. And I want you to be a part. So be sure to subscribe. Be sure to check out the show notes. Those links are going to take you to the social media pages of all these women. They're going to be joining me on that social media page. That's the 5 Minute Mom Podcast on Instagram. So be sure, if you're not following us on Instagram, hop over there. Some incredible encouragement coming your way soon. And until next week, when we hear from Lauren, just know that I am praying for you. And I am so excited for where we are headed together this fall.